Hello and welcome to today's session, Getting to Zero Touch Zen, Upleveling IT Through Automation. My name is Jim Brennan. I serve as the Chief Product Officer at BetterCloud, and I'm joined today by Tommy Donnelly, our CIO. Tommy, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jim. Thank you.
Well, I know you and I are both super excited to be here. This is a topic that is near and dear to both of our hearts that we spend a lot of time working on and talking about, so we're excited to share it with the audience today. And we want to begin by just doing a quick definition of what we mean by zero-touch IT. And we actually have a definition here: the orchestration of end-to-end automated workflows that replace repetitive manual IT processes. Now that's a mouthful. So we thought the best way to give everybody in the audience a sense of what we really mean by Zero Touch IT is to show a quick video. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so kind of a funny look there at something that I know most of us or many of us are very familiar with. So let's dig into that just a little bit. And that was BetterCloud's own Brian Farrell on the video there, talking about something again that's very common. So let's dig into the example here. So very common onboarding use case where we have a new employee accepting an offer to join the company. And typically what's going to happen in that scenario is somebody on the IT team is going to go ahead and set up the new profile for that employee and is going to assign some type of hardware, a Mac or a Windows laptop, computer, etc. Get all those apps loaded onto that computer, run all the updates we saw Brian doing in that video, and then they've got to actually ship that laptop out to that new employee. And all of this assumes, of course, that the supply chain is working the way that it should be and that all of that can happen quickly. We know that's typically not the case. Eventually, that employee receives that laptop, and you hope that it happens before their first day. Doesn't always, though, unfortunately. So what we saw at the end of that video now, to contrast that, is a very different approach, and one that, in fact, does use zero-touch automation. So let's take a look at what that could actually look like. So same initial scenario where we've got this new employee that has accepted the offer to join the company. Now, though, we have the HR team simply creating a ticket for IT that says, in fact, that employee is ready to join. And everything after that point in this new scenario is completely automated. In this case, using an automation platform like BetterCloud, like we saw in the video. And everything is automated from that point on. The group membership for that employee is used to determine what apps that employee needs. Those apps are assigned to the computer, even to the point, as we saw, where that computer is purchased and configured and mailed, sent to the employee. And the new employee receives that computer, and using tools like Jamf, all that setup happens as part of that automation. And the result here is not only efficiency for the IT staff, but a much, much better experience for that new employee. They're able to get to work on that very first day. They don't have to jump through a bunch of hoops later to get access to the things they need to do their job. So, just one example of many when we talk about zero touch, but one that I think hits home for many of you in this audience when you think about the typical work required to provision a new laptop and get that sent to the employee.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about the benefits of zero touch for IT teams. I've been in IT for about 20 years, and most of those years, IT has really been reactive. There's too much work to do. You're intaking a bunch of tickets, but the technology is now here to really make IT be a strategic partner of the business. So when we think about the zero touch journey, we're really thinking about taking an IT team from reactive to proactive to strategic. And this is honestly a roadmap to get everyone on your IT team promoted. Reactive teams typically don't have much automation. They're really just ticket takers. Using zero touch IT, us at BetterCloud have actually been able to automate over 50% of all of our service requests to IT. And what that does is that frees up that team to really start meeting with strategic leaders of the business and proving out that we can solve strategic problems with technology. So our goals are really not IT specific goals, but they're goals that are aligned with different functional areas of the business. So this is really the true value of moving to this platform. It's really going to help you up level your IT team.
So Tommy, why don't we take the next 20 minutes or so, and we really want to get into some aspects of how somebody might begin this journey of zero touch IT and what that can look like, what it typically looks like, the benefits, etc. So, and I'd like to begin with, let's take a scenario where perhaps somebody in our audience today has really not even heard of zero touch. They certainly haven't taken those first steps. And they're trying to figure out, well, how do we get started, right? What should we tackle first? Assuming that we don't even have tooling in place. Where's a good place to start?
Yeah, I think the first thing you have to do is create scale and capacity within your teams. So you can start, starting this journey from moving from reactive to strategic. The first thing that we did is we went to our ticket system and we actually created a checkbox. Could this ticket be automated? And so every ticket that we were doing within the organizations, we were actually checking off, hey, this could be automated in the future. And so that creates an automation backlog of things that you could potentially leverage to automate. The second thing is we got a low code automation tool that every single person in the IT organization could use. You want to up level everybody on the team. You don't want it to be developer heavy. Because when you start getting into some of the use cases that we're talking about, some of those require a lot of governance and maintenance to maintain. So once you buy that low code automation tool, I recommend mandating, hey, 5%, start out with 5%. 5% of your team's time is going to be carved out to basically automating things. And if you hit the right things with stuff like offboarding and onboarding that take a lot of the team's time, you'll quickly be able to bump that up to 10%, to 15%, to 20%, until a majority of the team's time is actually spent automating things and embedding with the organization for like higher organizational challenges, as opposed to reacting to those tickets. The other thing I would say from a strategic level is start to build that culture that IT can do more and really start to manage perception across the organization by communicating out. If you think about an organization, IT and HR are two of the only departments that actually service, the entire company. And so it's really important for us to get out there and communicate with the entire business, do it on a regular cadence, making sure that people understand what we're working on, what capabilities we have, and that we're available to plug in and help you meet your strategic goals.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially what you talked about as far as understanding what the ticket landscape looks like for your organization today to determine where should you focus first. You talked about skills a little bit. You mentioned like coding. Are there other skills? Does this require a different set of skills from your team or up leveling of skills to get started on this?
Yeah. So, if you get a low code platform, where you can, on our team, every single member of our team automates tickets. That's part of their onboarding process is actually going through the BetterCloud training, and after 2 days of training, they can take that ticket backlog that you created and automation backlog, and they can start working on some of those tickets. So, when I look at this stuff, I was like, if you really want to maintain this, and if you really want to achieve those higher levels of automation within your team, it really has to be a low code solution. I think that that's also kind of your thought process as the CPO of BetterCloud and something that you think about on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's we all know that these teams they have too much on their plates to begin with, and this type of tool cannot actually be one more thing for them to learn and worry about. It needs to be pretty seamless, and it needs to be such that the platform itself is bringing light to some insights that are going to increase efficiency and use of that tool itself, right?
Yep.
Okay, so perfect. So now we've gotten started, right? We've identified some set of tickets to automate. We've done that. We've maybe gotten some early wins to start to shift the culture of the company towards this direction. Where do we go next once those basic automations are set?
Yeah. So what we do is we apply these principles of zero touch automation, which is essentially to the entire employee lifecycle, because this is going to create an incredible experience for your customers. Numerous people have came and talked to me after they started at BetterCloud. I was like, wow, it was really amazing how much everything just happened, and I didn't have to reach out. There was no ambiguity. So that includes receiving your hardware, the use case that we saw for the with the video. Onboarding all the groups and all the permissions to all the applications. What we call midlife cycle changes, meaning that if you change jobs, things start to, you might need a different set of apps. You might need to be deprovisioned from these apps. And then, offboarding when somebody leaves the company. And if you look at that entire employee life cycle, you'll be surprised if you get good at that a lot of just these ad hoc tickets and one-off tickets for application access and those things just start going away. So you'll really be surprised at the reduction in the amount of tickets that you will see from just automating those 4 or 5 use cases. And then the other thing it just really helps is we have a smaller team, and if you're supporting a bunch of people in different time zones, you're really able to, people are able to get support off hours. It helps you be able to support a nonlinear workday where, hey, I'm working from the French Alps, and I want to wake up, check my email. I want to then go skiing, and after that, I want to go and work for a couple hours, and then I might go out to dinner and come back and work a little bit more. And so that's on a completely different time zone. As you start really automating everything from this life cycle, you really enable people to do that, and they don't have to wait because 4 o'clock their time might be 12 o'clock at night for us. So that employee life cycle is huge, and it makes a huge impact to the organization and how people can work. So it's all about that
Yeah,
employee experience.
it's really interesting. So on that employee experience, what does it actually look like for the end user to interface with with the system? Is it happening via Slack bot or via the existing ticketing system? What is my experience, my zero touch experience in terms of that initial request and then getting notified? What does that look like?
Yeah. So it really is kind of transparent in a lot of ways, just from you're going to receive this things without asking. And if you're really good at onboarding employees to the right applications and so forth, just things are there when they need it. So we're triggering off like access to things after they complete from ADP APIs. Birthright applications get provisioned, and we have a really good handle on what those are. If there's sensitive applications they need access to, you might get provisioned those after you complete a security training. So we really try to make it transparent to the end user, and where they just never have to open that ticket. It just happens.
Yeah, pretty awesome. Yeah, they just get the benefit and they don't need to know what's happening behind the scenes, right? They just know they've got their laptop or they've got access to the applications they need. Fantastic. Okay. You had talked before, Tommy, about this notion of moving eventually towards more strategic IT. Can you give us a bit more insight in terms of how an organization can go about getting there?
Yeah, and so really it's all about getting to that 50% automation mark, to where a larger majority of your tickets are automated. And once and that really requires the entire team. And that's where I kind of go back to that low code solution, to where every single person can create automations, especially when you talk about managing what we call midlife cycle changes, where somebody switches from one job to another job. There's so many different iterations of jobs that people can, move from one space to another space. And so having the whole team be able to manage those processes is super important. But once you automate that, you know, 30 to 50% of your tickets, then it's really important for the team to start going and interfacing with every single department and really understanding the needs of those departments, what goals that they're trying to achieve, what OKRs they have, what's going well, what's not going well. Because if you're having conversations with those leaders and they're saying, I just need my laptops faster, then it just doesn't mean that you've really achieved kind of that trust. And they're really not thinking about the IT from a strategic standpoint. So you'll kind of
Yeah.
know based on those conversations, and you'll start being pulled into conversations earlier when you're talking about the goals of departments and what they're trying to achieve. That's when you really, really know that you've achieved strategic IT. It takes time, and it takes trust. But if I promise everyone here that if you can solve and help the sales achieve, hey, if their goal was $1 million in sales and you help them get to 1.2 million, they will bring you into those conversations and, in the planning processes and earlier in the processes, which is really going to elevate everyone's role and kind of get IT a seat at that strategic table.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. I mean, this is definitely a big change for a lot of organizations. You mentioned the cultural aspect. I think I have to imagine that in many organizations, initially at least, before they've maybe seen those benefits you were talking about, there's going to be some resistance to bringing IT into those conversations, right? And then, as you said, at some point, after some proof points, maybe they're more open to it. But what advice do you have, maybe if that's the situation for somebody in our audience, where historically the company has just not viewed IT that way, and there is more of that perhaps resistance to that way of working?
It's really just looking inward and saying what have I wouldn't put it on them. I'd really look inward to your own department, and it's really about asking yourself why. And a lot of times it's just educating those stakeholders on what your department is capable of, how that you can be a force multiplier to help them achieve their goals, leveraging technology. Explaining to them that, hey, if you're on the marketing or sales teams, you might not understand some of the more modern capabilities of technology and some of the cutting edge technologies that are coming out. And making them be okay to be vulnerable to you, and how building those relationships to where they'll tell you where, hey, we're having a problem with this, or we potentially need help with that. But once you do that for one or two departments, word starts getting out, and I think that you just start building that momentum that snowballs, by helping people achieve those strategic goals. So it's like, really, really, hey, don't make those goals like IT related. I mean, it's important to have IT operational, metrics, but hey, if you can help another department meet a strategic objective to achieve, say, like 20% more sales, really, really get out there and communicating the value that you're bringing to the organization, and letting people know that we have this new way of operating, I think is hugely important, because a lot of people are coming from places to where, the IT team was just ticket takers. So it's just managing that perception.
Yeah. Yeah. So two things I heard there. One is that, sort of take control of that destiny yourself, right? As that IT leader and IT team. And also we're talking really about internal marketing to some extent, right? You got to get out there and make sure people understand the value and what's happening and what then might be possible. So two really important points for sure. Tommy,
Yeah,
is this
I would
sustainable? I mean, is
go.
there some, sorry, go ahead.
So going back to that, I try to, I tell my team, if we're not sending out an email to the entire organization every couple of weeks, we're not doing enough internal marketing for our team. And I know it's a little awkward at first from, being technology. Sometimes we tend to be introverted, but I can't stress enough the need for that team to change that perception, is to over communicate and overcorrect in that area. Sorry for the interruption, Jim.
Yep. No worries. Important point. So, how sustainable is this? I mean, is there a plateau that we're going to hit at some point when you've automated everything that can be automated, and then that's it, or what does that look like over time?
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, I just don't think that you honestly, I don't think that you can sustain an IT department without moving in this direction. You really look at the explosion of SaaS applications, and how a lot of companies had, 4 or 5 applications in the past, and they now have over 200. So there's no IT team in the world that can maintain all those applications, making sure that we're handling all the compliance, making sure that people, are servicing those needs of the companies. We have to move to this kind of zero touch philosophy. Um, so it's really not a question of if it's sustainable. It's really kind of a necessity that we have to do this in order to sustain in the future.
Yeah, no, it's really existential. It sounds like to the team for sure. Okay. Well, good. Well, I know we chatted a bit earlier about this next topic, but I think you were going to turn the tables on me a bit and talk more about the
Yeah.
product side of
So
things.
so
Yeah.
being the CPO of BetterCloud, what is the future are you building into the platform to strengthen this stance of zero touch IT?
Yeah, it really maps directly back to what you just talked about. We're at this point with the number of applications and the exponential growth of those applications that really there's no way, it's frankly impossible for any IT team to keep up with all the different nuances of every single application. And by nuances, I'm talking about things like, what is the best way to onboard and offboard? What is the best way to know where you've got sensitive data exposed? What is the best way to know who's using what applications and for what purpose and with what license levels? It's just impossible. You think about it, doing that across 10 or 20 or 50 is pretty tough. When you get, to your point, to 200, or we see some organizations with 1,000 different SaaS applications, it's literally impossible, right? And so, as I mentioned before, as we think about the platform that we're building and delivering at BetterCloud, we want to make sure that we're not adding to that problem. And the way that we ensure that is to make sure that we're not just a platform for you to query or ask a bunch of questions of, and we give you answers back. There's a place for that. There's definitely a place for that. But it's more important that we're a platform that is also telling you which questions you should be asking in the first place, right? And we do that by bringing you, in a very proactive way, insights that tell you these are the things you need to be paying attention to. These are the things that you can do or the steps you can take to get to that more strategic place that Tommy, you talked about. So that really is our focus. We've got a huge amount of focus on that, and that extends to every aspect of the platform, from the user experience, how you actually interact with the platform, to how automations are running on the back end and how you're notified of things. But that is a guiding light for us, because we know that is going to be a requirement going forward. It's not going to be enough, as I mentioned, for any platform like BetterCloud to be just serving up the answers to the things you're wondering about with this application or that application. Again, you need to just be able to get to work and do the things that are going to have the most impact for your business. And so our mission is to make sure we're informing you of those things, and then also setting up scenarios within the platform to make achieving those goals really, I'll say, easy, through things like recommendations and very guided paths towards the outcomes that you want to achieve.
That's great.
Okay. All right. So I know we're coming up here. We got just a little bit more time left. Let's pivot a little bit here and talk about what this can mean, what all of this can mean in terms of the careers of the people who find themselves on these IT teams. What are the benefits and potential impacts of adopting this mindset and practice of zero-touch IT?
Yeah, so there's a few times, in my career that I've seen this type of opportunity for IT practitioners to really elevate themselves in the career. If you can, communicate this message to your leadership, and this idea of going from reactive, proactive to strategic, and having this plan, set out for your leadership so they can understand that the value that you're going to bring to the organization, that you're not just going to be reactive, that you're going to be a force multiplier for every single department in your organization, and that you can solve strategic problems with technology. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that have used this talk track to elevate themselves within their existing organization and get promotions. I've had people reach out to me and, after watching a couple of webinars and how we do this kind of stuff, and say like, hey, I took your talk track and I was interviewing for, multiple CIO positions, and I got 2 offers and I got my dream job. So, this is something that not only is going to help the organization, but it's also going to help your career. And, again, going back is really get out there and communicate to everybody, communicate what your team is doing, and communicate how your team is moving from reactive to strategic.
Excellent. Okay. All right. So we want to go ahead and wrap up here. We've talked a lot about zero touch. We've made a few references to the BetterCloud platform. So just know that BetterCloud is a zero-touch platform. It's an automation platform. It's a SaaS operations platform with the goal of getting you to that zero-touch reality for you and your team and your organization, and so that you can realize some of these impacts. and the value that we've been talking about. If you want to learn more, there's a couple things I want to call your attention to. If you are an existing BetterCloud customer and you simply want to know how you can get more out of the platform, maybe there's some other use cases you can focus on or other things you can be doing, please contact your account team and they will be more than happy to help you with that. If you're brand new to BetterCloud, maybe this is the first time you've ever heard of the platform or the company, that's great. We would love for you to learn more. You can do so first by registering for a demo of the platform, and you can actually see it firsthand and get a real sense of what is possible. You see that link there, bettercloud.com/demo request. So Tommy, I want to thank you for sharing all of your awesome insights with the audience, and we want to thank everybody in the audience for joining us today. We hope you have a great rest of your day and enjoy the sessions to come, and we look forward to working with you. Thanks so much.